Pattern of life. Everybody in this room understands pattern of life. How many of you have used pattern of life in an investigation? The overwhelming majority. Can anybody in the room cite a study, a class, any type of academia that validates how much time of behavior do I need to establish pattern of life? What do we rely on for that? Like, where is the science behind that? Where's the studies behind that? And let's say your data set is super dense. I have tons of data. Can I look at 30 days of history, walk into court and testify that an anomaly is an anomaly based on 30 days? Can I do it based on 15 days? Can I do it on 45, 60 days, 180 days? Like, where does the science lie that actually backs up the work product? As an analyst, if I look at all the stuff and I'm like, hey, last Thursday, look at this. Do you see how this phone goes all the way over here? And then there's this point of purchase sale down there. And then they call so-and-so. That is totally outside their pattern of life. That is a strong statement. How do we back that up in court with some type of backing outside of my training experience? Because trust me, I've had training experience challenged. It's only going to get you so far in court. I've got to have some type of methodology that I can point to. Is anybody aware of a pattern of life study that clearly establishes what that temporal window is to establish pattern of life reliably? Think about that for a minute. I'm going to say in the state of Arizona, we have some of the brightest minds in the crime analyst field sitting in this room right now. A core component of crime analysis is pattern of life behavior, right? Understanding pattern of life, anomalies, seeing where that context so that I can explain what's different. Yet nobody in the room can even think of a study that they can cite that backs that work product. And I can talk to you individually, I know what it is. Well, I've been doing this a really long time and I was told this and my experience shows me this and I just am really careful with how much I commit to that. But the idea that we don't have that in law enforcement is a big deal. I think we need that. Those studies actually exist, not in law enforcement. Law enforcement has not done them. For the most part, it came out of Japan. When Japan builds roads, ingress and egress out of neighborhoods and cities, they actually do crazy studies into what that pattern of life in those areas look like. And they've got some amazing science where they've pulled phones on 100,000 phones. They'll pull all of the mobile history, the actual ping data, kind of on the state-sponsored side. So that whole search warrant thing, it's not for criminal, everything's anonymized. And they've done some really interesting studies. 30 days is not enough. It'll get you a work product. You can start to lean on it a little bit, but 30 days is not enough. Technically, 60 days is still kind of outside the window. The target you want is around 90 to 120 days. 180 days would be the golden rule. Like that's the great side. We want 6 months worth of records. So the more I started researching this, I found 11 different studies that actually kind of all land on that same thing, that 90 to about 180 days is really what we're going for. Of course, all of you in the room are probably saying, yeah, that's great, but a lot of times our prosecutors won't go for that or our judges won't go for that. It's an education piece. As soon as you explain to the prosecutor and the judge, hey, my work product requires me to do this. If I'm looking at 30 days, that work product is not as reliable. And by the way, Your Honor, behavior is evidence. Everybody wants to look at crimes as what I did just before and just after the crime itself. We have to get better of articulating in our search warrants, behavior is evidence. The only thing that gives me context to your behavior last week is the 180 days leading up to that. Otherwise, I'm just throwing darts in the dark, hoping that one lands. But if you give me 180 days of your behavioral patterns, and now I'm looking at last week, I have context. I can explain the differences. I can articulate it. I can back it up when challenged. That's something that I covered in the book. I also have a white paper out. It's a white paper that explains this whole study, and then it actually has the affidavit language to put into your search warrant. And I spent a lot of time writing that affidavit language in such a way to say, hey, Your Honor, here's the studies. Here's what the science says. Here's how this is evidence of the crime. And by the way, we're talking about digital evidence, Your Honor. That has a shelf life. So I'm not saying you're the problem, Judge, but if you don't give me 180 days and you deny this warrant, by the time this goes to trial or the defense says we need 180 days, that data is now destroyed and you've allowed exculpatory evidence to potentially be destroyed. So you do what you want, Judge, but I really recommend you do it this way. And I wrote that in a very professional manner, but hopefully that lands. So before we get into pattern of life, because that's what we're about to talk to here, I wanted to frame that just a little bit there.